Thank you everyone for joining us. I am Edith Juguna and I'm the director of the Illinois 60 by 25 network. And I'm joined by Sam Nelson. Sam, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Sam Nelson with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, often known as ISAC, and I work in our capacity development area. So thanks so much for joining us this morning, bright and early.
Great. We are excited to have you, and we created this network, Newcomers to the network session, because our conference has grown significantly and we have quite a few people who are not as familiar with the network. And so Sam and I will give an overview of the network, and we'll also hear from Sydney Stig Kaufman from East St. Louis and Daryl Hogue from the Fulton area in Northwestern Illinois about their experiences in the network. So I will kick us off. Why 60 by 25? So the Illinois P20 Council has set a goal to ensure that 60% of Illinois adults have a high quality college degree or post-secondary credential by 2025. Right now, Illinois is at 55.2%, which is great, but when you dig a little deeper into the data, you see that there are discrepancies among demographics, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that in the opening session of the conference. And so about 2013, these three organizations, Advance Illinois, Education System Center, and the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, came together because we were hearing about the emergence of collaboratives across the state that were working to increase post-secondary attainment based on this goal that the state had set. And the reason behind the goal is that most jobs will require more than a high school diploma after 2025. And the communities were coming together to work towards this goal, but there wasn't a statewide infrastructure to support them. And so we came together and thought, what if we created a network that could provide an opportunity for communities to learn from one another, share best practices, and serve as exemplars to others across the state about how to do this work using collective impact as the organizing principle. And so our network goal is to support communities to increase meaningful and equitable post-secondary attainment. And when we talk about meaningful, we are really referring to post-secondary attainment that allows students to pursue areas of interest and pursue areas that have a career path and that are in demand. And when we talk about equitable, we are talking about really ensuring that those students who are farthest from opportunity have access to those opportunities. And then in 2015, we created what we call the Leadership Community Designation. And we started with 6 communities in 2015, and we now have 18 communities. And so what are the expectations of a leadership community? So we ask that they define a geographic community focus, and we're very flexible about what this is. In some parts of the state, it's a county level, others, it's several counties. In others, it's the community college footprint. We are flexible about how communities define their geography, but it's important for us to know so that when we provide data, we're using the correct focus area. And then we ask that they document a partnership of folks from different sectors that can work towards increasing post-secondary attainment. We know that no one entity can be responsible for ensuring that students are successful for life after high school. And then we ask that they identify a trusted intermediary organization. So someone who can help organize the meetings, set the agenda, make sure that the work is moving forward. I'm sure you've all been to meetings where great ideas are discussed, but if there's nobody to follow up and make sure that what's discussed actually gets done, then nothing happens. Then we ask that they use data for continuous improvement and they develop a plan to implement key strategies. So who's at the table? In terms of the partnerships, we ask that they have employers, workforce boards, folks from the education sector, municipal leadership, and community-based organizations. And what do leadership communities get in return? So the network organizers provide a peer-to-peer learning and action network. This conference is an example of that. And then we provide technical assistance on collective impact and strategies to reach post-secondary attainment. We gather and curate critical data on education and workforce that communities can use to inform decisions about where there are gaps in their communities and where they're making progress. And then we serve as a conduit for financial support to communities. So we seek funding from public and private sources, which we then offer to communities to implement their strategies. So this is an example of the data that we offer to communities. It's the Cradle to Career dashboard. It pulls together data from several sources and makes it possible for communities to see where they are on various metrics. And then we ask communities to identify focus indicators. So this is an example of what Peoria has chosen. These are the areas that they want to focus on in their community and that they will really be looking at as they think about the progress that they're making. So what's the scale of the network? We're reaching quite a lot of students across the state. So 45% of all public high school students are in communities that are part of the network. And 34% of those are school students outside Chicago. And then a few years ago, we realized that we needed additional voices at the table to help inform both the kind of work we do and how we do it. And so we established a guiding team comprised of folks from different sectors who help guide the work. And Sydney and Daryl, who you will hear from later, actually play a dual role. They are in leadership communities and they also serve on the guiding team. And then last year, we really wanted to get a better understanding of student experiences and how we can support them as a network. And so we created a student advisory council. It's comprised of students from leadership communities, and they've already begun to really inform us about a number of ways that we can talk so that students are able to understand the information that we share. So things like labor market information, which can be kind of dry, especially for someone who's not a data person like myself. But the way it's presented to students sometimes might not resonate. So we've had sessions with them where they've helped inform us about how we can better talk about that so that students have a better understanding of it. And now I'll kick it over to Sam to talk about the impact that the network has had.
Okay, great. Thanks, Edith. On the next slide, you'll see that ever since Illinois adopted the 60 by 25 goal, the state has developed a different number of frameworks and policies to kind of increase college and career readiness and increase our post-secondary attainment. A highlight of this was in 2016, the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act, the PWR, or sometimes people call it the POWER Act, was created. And there were 4 key components: the post-secondary and career expectations, PACE framework, the college and career pathway endorsements, a pilot of competency-based high school graduation requirements, and then scaling up 12th grade transitional courses, initially in math and also now expanding into English. So it's these 4 aligned strategies that really require cross-sector collaboration, and that's what we've been able to do through the 60 by 25 network. Next slide. One of the things we want to do is also talk about the successes. So as I mentioned before, you can see here on this chart, the remediation rates for students has been decreasing, but they've been decreasing more in the schools that are within the 60 by 25 network. So we're really encouraged to see that participation in the network does go down and impact the benefits to our students. Next slide. And we also see that schools that are participating within the network, their FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, their FAFSA application rates are increasing as well too. So we really feel it's the energy and the synergy of working through each other, through the networks, that help increase the success to our students. The next slide. And to really capture this work, a lot of times we do a lot of work, we run individual reports, but we never take time to step back and see really what changes are we making, what have we accomplished, what can we celebrate. So last year we went back in the 2021 year, we went back and really captured the work that the network has done. And when I say the network, it isn't just the network organizers, it's all of you, it's all of our member communities and the communities and the stakeholders within that community. So we created the 60 by 25 network impact report, which captured the work of the network between the years of 2013 when we first started all the way through 2020. And this report is available on our website. And really the goal of the report is to highlight the strategies that have been used, lessons that we've learned, from our community members, and it's really intended to shine both a light on the hard work the communities are doing, as well as shine the light on where we need to go, where we need to increase our efforts if we're going to move the needle even more towards our 60 by 25 goal. Next slide. There are many reasons to participate in the network, and we'll hear from Sydney and Daryl from their own experiences. And you can see the bullet points here. And I think the one word I would use to summarize why you should participate is collaboration. You're collaborating with state policymakers and having influence on future state policy. You're collaborating with peers in other communities. So really it's that spirit of learning from each other and sharing what you've learned, what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, so other communities can gain from that. So with that, I'll turn it back to Edith.
Thank you, Sam. And I'll now kick it over to Sydney to talk a little bit about your experience in the network.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sydney. I am with the East St. Louis School District, and we are part of East Side Aligned in the East St. Louis, Illinois community. And as has been described, you know, our community might look similar to yours, might look very different from yours. We've got higher education partners involved in our collaborative effort, as well as community-based organizations, as well as our school district and employer partners. We've been part of the movement since actually before it became known as 60 by 25. So I think we started in 2012. And it truly has been a collaboration, as Sam had said, and that's why we are still here and remaining engaged. So the 60 by 25 network is that opportunity for us to receive guidance and insights from other communities and from statewide leadership. They help us set targets. They're providing resource generation, such as the mini grants that were referenced earlier. They're advocating for us. They're also kind of shining a light on where to go next in terms of guiding us forward. And also accountability. That's part of the story here too, I think, for at least for our community. It's kind of like when it's always helpful to take your dog for a walk so you can stay on a walking schedule. Being accountable on a statewide level to other people helps you stay in the game. Some of the specific things that we have benefited from include the transitional math, our competency-based education pilot. We also have Jobs for America's graduates, and I saw them on the line, Caitlin, hi. Pathway endorsements. We're also part of the STEM challenges. And we, at the very beginning, we also benefited from a Jobs for the Future asset mapping as part of Pathways to Prosperity to really help guide our work locally. In addition to the thought partnership that we gain from the 60 by 25 network, I want to say that it really is driven around equity and that focus of equity and using the peer-to-peer relationships to strengthen and guide us, as well as data analysis to help push us forward. And there's also a strong value of youth voice. And constantly bringing that back to the table too, you know, making sure that we're engaging all the key stakeholders, which do include youth. One of the other examples that we're part of, I think I failed to mention this, was Pathways to Racial Equity Learning Collaborative that we're also engaged with right now with assistance from the network. And because of all this work, we have been increasing our outcomes for our youth. So we're very proud of that, even during the challenging times from the pandemic. You know, we're increasing our rigor for our high school level students, dual credit, the pathways, and developing those so it really does serve our students into the future. So that's a brief overview from the East St. Louis community.
Thank you, Sydney. And Daryl, I'll kick it over to you. And we'll have an opportunity to ask questions. This is a fairly informal setting, so you can either enter your questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask it out loud.
All right, thanks for inviting me and thanks for having me speak. It's been, I showed up at my very first conference as a new superintendent in 2014 and just sort of gathered all this information and never really had much information about collective impact type of work. And after the conference, I reached out to some of the 60 by 25 leaders, Edith being one of them, Sam being one of them, and a couple other folks, and they really helped me I'm like, so how do we do this? And I reached out to area chambers, economic development, higher ed, manufacturing sectors, business sectors, medical sectors, and just invited them to a meeting, and we discussed, what could we do collectively for our region. And out of those conversations, we just continued to grow, and the network continued to provide guidance on how to set up collective impact, how to monitor what you're doing. Again, they've just been a great resource. So I would, number one, if you're interested in establishing a leadership community, dig in closely with Edith and Sam, because they'll definitely direct you and help you understand that. Since we've been together, our core efforts focus around our career center, which serves 18 high schools in our region. We're a fairly rural region, and so we have 18 high schools. We also work closely with Sauk Valley Community College, and they serve most of our high schools. So we are a pretty large region. We kind of run from Dixon, Illinois, which is part of Sauk's footprint, all the way to Clinton, Iowa. I'm right next to the Mississippi River, and plenty of our businesses and partners are in Iowa. So we're a unique situation in that we include a lot of the work with Iowa. Again, as I mentioned, since starting this, we've been able to, I was just writing down some of the things we've been able to set up. We've had great partnership synergy, and so that's allowed us to increase our impact with manufacturing. Manufacturing came to our meetings early on and said, we're losing employees. They saw the employee situations. They worked with Sauk Valley Community College to establish an intern program where students worked part-time, went to Sauk Valley Community College part-time. Our WACC students sort of were the students that they were targeting. That was a post high school set up for Sauk. So again, by working together, we were able to just fill that need that they had with students wanting to get into the manufacturing center with their multi-craft program. We've been able to work with our local chambers. One of our local chamber members, Chris, comes to our schools to talk about job skills. They do a 6-week job skills course with our freshmen and sophomores. We have done, we've always had work studies in our high school, and through the partnership, we've expanded, the different businesses we can send students to for work studies. One of the things we've been doing the last couple of years is working really hard to put our special education students into a job placement the second semester of their senior year. And so we've had several students be fully employed, with an IEP, and the parents and the employers have just really enjoyed that opportunity to get these kids in. We craft time during the day to get them to the employer, and we will help them get them there if necessary and provide support. The last several years, we've established an education pathway and a manufacturing pathway. And so our high school has graduated 3 students last year in the ed pathway, and we'll graduate another 3 this year. I know some of the other area high schools have similar numbers, not large numbers, but in small communities, those are, 3 students out of 75 students. That's a pretty good percentage. And again, the network has continued to give us the opportunity to financial support through various grants. They've always notified us of grants. So I really enjoy the financial support from the network, as well as giving us heads up when things are coming out, because we've been able to gain access to some of those dollars by being a leadership community.
Thank you very much, Sydney and Daryl. And I'll just add that the funding that we offer communities is actually fairly small. They are small seed grants, but the idea is for those grants to be used to help spark work that might not have happened. And Daryl, I don't know if you want to say a little bit about the funding you got for your education pathways that enabled you to then apply for a grant that from the state, a fairly large grant from the state, because you already had the work underway. Yeah,
that's a great point. Probably 4 years ago is when we started, or maybe 5 years ago when we started pathway planning. So when the state came out with their pathway large pathway grant, we really had our handbook, we had everything in place, that it was an easy application and easy to get rolling and get started. Again, like Edith said, I think we got maybe $10,000 to $15,000 to meet and plan and, you know, bring people together early on before the state offered their ed pathway programming again. And I don't think we knew 5 years ago that would be the case. Maybe you guys did, we didn't, but we continued to believe in the process. And then when the state put the dollars there, we were able to get both year 1 and year 2 grants. And I'm sure we'll go for a year 3 grant as well.
Great. Are there any questions or comments?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you feel comfortable asking a question that way, or if you want to put a question into the chat, we're happy to respond to it that way too. So again, whether it's for us or if you have a question for Sydney or Daryl, because they are living, shining examples of leadership community. So feel free to ask them as well.
Thanks again for joining us. We are super excited for this year's conference. We had over 700 registrants, and we look forward to seeing you at the opening plenary and at the rest of the sessions. And Sydney and Daryl, thank you for always your willingness to present and to share your information, and for the hard work that you're doing in your communities.